Welcome back. Let's talk about branching and restoring in Git. Branching allows you to create separate lines of development within a repository. It's useful for working on new features without affecting the main branch. It's important not to push directly to the main branch to avoid potential conflicts and issues. Using branches to test new ideas safely is an essential development practice to implement, especially when working on teams. The main branch should only be updated if code is completely functional and has been reviewed by multiple team members through a merge request. For more information about branching and merge requests, you can reference the resources linked in the description. When to use a branch versus a fork versus clone. You should use branches when you're working on a project with a team that has given you write access to everything in the repository and you have a good understanding of the code. On projects where you are one of the main developers, it's a good practice to create a branch for each issue rather than having a single branch for all of your work. You can clone a repository for a few different reasons. Git clone can be used for both when you have developer permissions and want to create a copy that will push to the original remote repo, or can be used when you don't have permissions and want to create a local copy that can still pull down changes from the remote repository. A repository that you clone is a linked copy that will continue to synchronize with the remote repository when developers make changes. You should fork a repository when you want to contribute, but do not have direct write access. Forking is useful for contributing without access rights, since it essentially replicates what a Git clone does on a server copy of the project's repo. So you can experiment and make changes without having any connection to the original repo. A Git fork creates a completely independent copy of the remote repository. For now, you don't need to have a full understanding of the differences between each of these. You will likely be using branches on all of your projects and using Git clone for some projects or software builds. We wanted to include Git fork to give a bit of background on it because it is used for activities in CS 351. Now we'll move on to restoring previous versions. If you need to revert to a previous version, you can use Git's restore, reset, and revert commands. This can save you from potential mishaps. A Git restore will update your repo to the last commit that you made. We discussed in a previous video that a commit is like a snapshot of the current state of your code, and adding is more equivalent to saving things locally for your next commit. If you add something that you didn't mean to, you can restore back to your most recent commit before you added the file, which is similar to hitting an undo button without having to make any major changes to your repo. If you end up committing something that you later want to change rather than just adding it, there are a few options for what you can do to fix this. A Git revert can remove changes that you introduced with a commit and bring you back to a different commit. Similarly, a Git reset can remove changes introduced in a commit, but it does so by removing that commit from your Git history. This can be helpful in some situations, but it's usually better not to change your Git history and instead use the revert command to jump back to certain commits. It may be helpful to create a test repository to practice branching and restoring. It's a great way to get comfortable with these concepts. Remember that these concepts take time to learn and that we are only scratching the surface. In our next video, we'll do a hands-on activity to create a blank project remotely. Stay tuned. The slides used for this presentation will be linked below, as well as additional resources about restoring and branching.